Rain hammered against the windshield so hard that the wipers could barely keep up. The streets of Seoul were almost empty. It was 2:17 in the morning. Neon lights from convenience stores reflected across the wet pavement in long, trembling lines. A tired yellow taxi rolled slowly through the storm. Inside the car, a man named Tunde gripped the steering wheel with both hands. His eyes were heavy. His back ached, but he kept driving. Because when you are a foreign taxi driver in a city that has never fully welcomed you, you keep driving. That is simply what you do. A man sat in the back seat, shifting restlessly. Then without warning, he said, "Stop here." Tunde glanced at the GPS. "We are not at the destination yet." The passenger said again, "I said stop." Before Tunde could respond, the man pushed the door open and jumped out into the rain while the taxi was still moving. "Hey, wait!" The door slammed shut. The passenger disappeared into a dark alley and was gone. Tunde pulled the taxi to the side of the road and stared into the darkness. Nothing. "No payment," he muttered. "Again." He leaned back and pressed both hands over his face and held them there, like he was trying to keep something inside. Being a taxi driver was already exhausting. Being a foreign taxi driver in Seoul made it something else entirely. He sighed, looked out at the empty road, and just sat there. Rain kept falling. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. At exactly 2:17 in the morning. Tunde stared at the screen. "Who could be calling me now?" He answered slowly. "Hello." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a woman's voice came through. Soft. Calm. Almost like a voice you would hear in a dream. "Don't stop the car." Tunde blinked. "I'm sorry. Who is this? Just keep driving." He sat upright. "How did you get this number?" The woman did not answer that question. Instead, she said, "I like the way you drive." Tunde frowned. "You're joking. You drive like someone who carries too many thoughts." He looked out at the empty road. "Do I know you?" "No." "Then why are you calling me?" A pause. Then she said something that made his chest tighten. "I have been watching you for a while." The rain drummed against the roof of the taxi. Tunde's hands tightened on the wheel. "What do you mean watching me?" Silence filled the line. Then she said simply, "Just drive and talk to me." Tunde should have hung up. Anyone would have. But something in her voice made him stay on the line. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe, deep down, he was just tired of silence. So he put the taxi back in gear and began driving again through the rainy streets of Seoul, with a stranger's voice in his ear, and something he had not felt in a long time stirring quietly in his chest. Now pause for just a moment. If you were Tunde, alone in a foreign city at 2 in the morning, and a stranger called you out of nowhere saying she had been watching you, what would you do? Would you hang up? Or would you keep talking? Tell me honestly in the comments. I read every single one. And if you love stories that reach deep into your heart before you even realize it, make sure you have subscribed, because this story is only just beginning. Tunde never planned to live in Korea. Back in Lagos, life had been loud and full and alive. Not easy, but alive. His mother cooked pepper soup on Sunday afternoons, and the smell filled the entire building. His younger brother Emeka was always getting into trouble, and always dragging Tunde into it right alongside him. Neighbors knew your name. They knew your problems. Sometimes they knew your problems before you did. Music played from open windows late into the night, and even when money was tight, even when the lights went out and the generator coughed and died, there was always someone nearby. There was always warmth. But opportunities were few. Tunde had a degree in logistics and transportation management. He had applied to dozens of companies. He had knocked on doors that never opened. And then one day, a distant cousin who worked in Seoul sent him a message. "There are opportunities here. Good money. Come and see." Tunde did not sleep the night before he made his decision. He sat with his mother at the kitchen table. She held both his hands in hers. "Go," she said quietly. "Go and make something. But remember where you come from." He cried on the plane. He did not tell anyone. He thought it would get easier with time. In some ways it did. In other ways, the ways that mattered most, it did not. Seoul was a city unlike anything he had imagined. Massive, efficient, beautiful in a cold, architectural kind of way. Everything moved faster than he was used to. People walked faster, ate faster, talked faster. They kept to themselves on the subway, headphones in, eyes down. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody nodded at strangers. Back home, a stranger on the street might ask where you were going and offer to walk with you. Here, people moved as if each of them lived inside their own sealed world. And being different made him visible in all the wrong ways. The looks in restaurants when he sat down. The way conversations sometimes went quiet when he entered a room. The small moments that were never big enough to report but that added up quietly inside him, like stones in a pocket. One afternoon at a convenience store, the cashier stared at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "Passport?" she suddenly asked. Tunde blinked. "I am just buying water." She watched him carefully until he paid and walked out. He stood on the pavement outside. The cold air hit his face. He breathed and kept walking. Because what else do you do? Those moments never completely stopped hurting. Driving a taxi became his way of surviving. Not just financially, but emotionally. Behind the wheel, he had a role, a purpose. Thousands of strangers passed through his back seat. Some were kind. Some were cruel. Most were simply indifferent. Late at night, when the city grew quiet and the streets emptied, Tunde would drive slowly through the glowing intersections of Seoul and think about his mother's kitchen, and Emeka's laugh, and the sound of the neighborhood waking up in the morning. One night, two young men entered his taxi laughing loudly. They whispered to each other in Korean, assuming he could not understand. Why is the driver foreign? I do not know. Cheaper labor, maybe. Tunde said nothing, but he understood every word. He had spent 2 years learning Korean, quietly and methodically, during every break between fares. When they reached their destination, one of them leaned forward and asked in broken English, "You like Korea?" Tunde paused, then answered honestly, "I am still trying to understand it." The men laughed, paid the fare, and left. Tunde drove on into the dark. Some nights he genuinely wondered if moving here had been a mistake. And then the phone calls started. Every night. Same time. 2:17 in the morning. The mysterious woman called again the very next night. Tunde stared at the unknown number on his screen. He almost did not answer. Then he did. "Hello? You picked up faster today," the woman said softly. "You called yesterday." "Yes. You still have not told me who you are." She laughed. "Just a little. Names complicate things. That does not make sense. Maybe not." Tunde drove slowly past rows of dark apartment buildings. "Why are you calling me?" Instead of answering, she asked him a question. "Do you enjoy driving at night?" "Sometimes." "Why?" He thought about it for a moment. Because fewer people are watching. She was quiet. Then she said, "I understand that feeling." And something in the way she said it, the weight behind those words, made Tunde feel, for the first time in a long time, that he was talking to someone who genuinely knew what he meant. That night their conversation lasted 10 minutes. The next night it lasted 20. By the end of the week they were speaking for almost an hour. She asked him questions no stranger had ever asked before. "Do you miss home?" "Every day," he admitted. "What do you miss most?" He did not have to think long. The noise. The noise. My family talks loudly. My neighbors talk loudly. Even the street vendors shout. Everyone is always shouting about something. She laughed. A real laugh this time. That sounds chaotic. It is, but it is warm. Do you understand? It is very, very warm. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, I think I do. In return, she began telling him things about Seoul, hidden things. A rice cake vendor near Gyeongbokgung Palace, who only appeared after midnight. A small park in Mapo where old men played buttock every morning, regardless of the weather. The way people in Seoul say goodbye to someone they will miss, not once but 3 times, walking backwards slowly, making the leaving last as long as possible. Little habits of a culture he had lived inside for 2 years, but never truly seen. How do you know all of this? He asked one night. I've had a lot of time to observe. Observe what? The city? The people in it? Including me? A small pause, especially you. But every time he asked about her own life, she slipped away from the question like water through fingers. What is your name? That is not important right now. Where do you live? Somewhere nearby. What do you do for work? That is complicated. Do you live alone? In a sense. Weeks passed. The calls grew longer. Sometimes 2 hours. Sometimes 3. Sometimes Tunda would finish his last fare of the night and simply park on a quiet street, engine running, and just talk. He began to look forward to 2:17 the way other people look forward to seeing someone they love. That thought surprised him when it arrived, but he could not push it away. One night, about 3 weeks into the calls, he admitted something he had not planned to say. You know, sometimes I keep driving even when I'm completely exhausted. Why? She asked. He hesitated. So you do not hang up. The woman was silent. Then she said softly, That is dangerous. Why dangerous? Because voices can make people fall in love. Tunda laughed, the kind of laugh that is also a confession. You think that is happening? A pause. I think it already happened. And neither of them spoke for a full minute after that. Just the sound of rain and breathing and the city passing outside the windows. I want to ask you something real. Have you ever felt closer to someone you have never seen than to someone sitting right in front of you? There is something about a voice, just a voice, that strips everything away. No appearance, no status. Just a person talking. Just 2 people finding each other in the dark. If that has ever happened to you, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. And please stay with this story, because what happens next will change the way you see connection. After that night, something shifted between them. The conversation became warmer, more honest. Tunde began telling her things he had never told anyone in Seoul, about the loneliness, about the small humiliations that built up quietly like pressure behind his eyes, about the nights he called his mother but said everything is fine because he did not want her to worry. And the woman listened, not with the polite half-attention people give you when they are waiting to speak. She truly listened. She remembered everything. 3 calls later, she asked, Did you ever go back to that park near the river you mentioned? Or, how is the old man at your usual petrol station? The one who always waves. Details he had mentioned only briefly, weeks ago. She had held on to every single one. But strange things also started happening. One night the woman suddenly said, The passenger behind you looks angry. Tunde glanced in the mirror. The man in the back seat was indeed staring furiously at his phone, jaw tight. Tunde froze. How did you know that? I guessed, she said. Too quickly. Another night she said, Turn left at the next junction. Tunde frowned. How do you know where I am right now? Lucky guess. You guess too well for someone who cannot see me. Silence. But the clues kept coming. Small details she should not know. You are parked near the red building on Mapo right now, she said one evening. It was not a question. Tunde looked through the windshield. There was indeed a red building directly ahead. The hairs on his arms rose. Another night she laughed softly and said, That couple who just got out of your car looked very much in love. Tunde had watched them walk away, hand in hand, just moments before. "How are you doing this?" he asked, his voice quiet, serious. "Do not worry about it. I need to know. Just keep driving, Tunde." "No. Tell me, are you watching me right now?" A long pause. So long, he thought the call had dropped. Then her voice returned, slower now, more careful. "There is something important you must understand. Tell me. You must never try to find me." Tunde's voice hardened. "That sounds suspicious." "It is not. It is a rule, a very important one." "Why?" "Because if we ever meet, if you ever find me, the calls stop. Forever." The words hung in the air of the car like smoke. Tunde felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Why would meeting you end everything? That is just the way it has to be. That is not a reason. It is the only one I can give you right now." A long silence settled between them. Finally Tunde said, "I do not like this rule." "I know," she said. "Please respect it anyway. Think about this for a second. Somebody tells you, 'I care about you,' but never look for me. If you find me, everything ends. Would you respect that rule, or would love make it impossible to stay away? I genuinely want to know what you would do. Drop your answer in the comments. And please share this story with someone who loves a deep mystery, because the truth behind this voice is going to surprise you." And then one night, the call never came. 2:17 passed. Nothing. Tunde sat with his phone on the dashboard, watching the screen, waiting. By 3 in the morning, he told himself she had simply fallen asleep. By 4 in the morning, he told himself there was nothing to worry about. He drove home as the city began to wake up. Tried to sleep. Could not. The next night, nothing. He answered 3 unknown numbers, all wrong calls. He felt foolish each time. A week passed, then 2. The silence was worse than anything she had ever said. Tunde found himself parked for long stretches doing nothing, just sitting in the yellow taxi on quiet side streets in the middle of the night, remembering her laugh, the way she said his name, how she always seemed to know exactly where he was. He began driving differently, slowly past the places she had described, the late-night rice cake vendor, the park with the old men and their board games, the red building on Mapo, searching without knowing what he was searching for. He drove past the city monitoring centers he had looked up online, large gray buildings with cameras mounted on every corner, lit from the inside at all hours. He would slow down and look at the lit windows and wonder. His cousin asked him one morning over a meal, "You look like a ghost. What happened to you?" "Nothing," Tunde said. "You are driving all night and not sleeping during the day. This is not healthy. I am fine." He was not fine. He was completely lost. He had traveled thousands of kilometers to build a better life. He had endured every cold shoulder and every late-night shift alone. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, a voice in the dark had made him feel less alone than he had felt in years. And now the voice was gone. He called his mother one afternoon, did not say much, just listened to her talk about the neighborhood, about Amika, about the pepper soup she had made. When she asked, "Are you okay?" he almost told her the truth. Almost. "I am okay, Mama," he said. "I just miss home." "Then come home," she said. He sat with those words for a long time after he hung up. That evening he got into his taxi, drove through the city. No destination, no passenger, just the road and the night and the question he could not stop asking himself. Who was she? 3 weeks after the call stopped, on a rainy Tuesday evening, a woman flagged down Tunde's taxi near Yoido. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had to think about each step. She wore a light blue coat, and her dark hair was pulled back simply. She got into the back seat without looking at him. "Where to?" he asked. She did not answer right away. She looked out the window at the rain. Tunde waited. Then she spoke. You finally broke the rule. Tunde's hands turned to stone on the wheel. That voice. He would know it anywhere. He would know it in the middle of a crowd. He would know it from another lifetime. Very slowly, he turned around. She was looking at him now. Young. Late 20s, perhaps, with quiet, tired eyes. Eyes that had been watching for a long time. Hana? He said. She nodded. Just once. Tunde stared at her. She was real. She was here. She was smaller than he had imagined. Quieter. More fragile. You are the one who has been calling me. Yes. All this time. All this time. He exhaled slowly. How are you watching me? She folded her hands in her lap. I work in the city, traffic monitoring center. The cameras. Yes. I sit in front of screens all night. Every night. Watching the city move. She looked out the window again. I noticed you months ago. Why me? Because you drove the same routes at the same times. You were always alone. You never seemed to rush. You drove like you were thinking about something very far away. She paused. You looked the way I felt. The rain eased slightly against the windows. So you just called me, he said. At first I just watched. For weeks. I told myself I was curious. And then one night you sat in your parked taxi for 40 minutes. Just sitting. Not moving. And I picked up my phone. Tunde remembered that night. He had been thinking about his mother. About whether to go home. About whether he had made a terrible mistake. Why did you make the rule? He asked. About not finding you. Hana's hands tightened together. She took a slow breath. Because I am sick, she said. The words settled quietly in the space between them. What do you mean? The doctors told me about a year ago. My heart. She said it plainly, not asking for sympathy, just as a fact, like she had made her peace with it. They do not know exactly how long, but they know it will not be many years. Hana, I did not want you to watch me disappear, she said. I did not want to become someone else's sadness. The calls were supposed to be small, just two lonely people talking in the night, but then they became something else. I stopped calling because I thought it would be cleaner, she continued, ending something before it became too painful. But then you started driving past the monitoring center every night. A very small smile crossed her face. I could see you on the cameras. Just circling. For 3 weeks. Tunde laughed. A short, helpless sound. So tonight I decided to flag you down. And break the rule, he said. And break the rule. They looked at each other. Tunde and Hana. A man who came from too far away. A woman who might not stay long enough. Both of them choosing in this single moment to be present anyway. Where should I drive? He asked. She looked out at the glowing skyline of Seoul, the rain easing now, the city shimmering. Anywhere, she said. Anywhere that is not nowhere. They drove for a long time, through the quiet neighborhoods of Mapo, along the Han River, where the bridge lights reflected gold on the dark water. Past the rice cake vendor near Gyeongbokgung, who was standing at his cart exactly where Hana had said he would be. Tunde pulled over. Without a word they both got out and stood in the cool night air eating rice cakes from paper cups, side by side. The vendor smiled at them like it was the most natural thing in the world. Back in the taxi, Hana asked, You are not angry? About what? About the watching. About the rule. About all of it. Tunde thought about this seriously. When I arrived in Seoul, he said slowly, I felt invisible. Not just ignored, actually invisible. Like I could disappear and no one would notice for weeks. He glanced at her. And then one night at 2:17, someone saw me. Really saw me. Through a camera, she said quietly. Through a camera, he agreed. But still. She turned to look at him. But still, she repeated. They kept driving. Hana told him about herself. She had grown up in Incheon, moved to Seoul for work at 23. She had a younger sister who called too rarely, and a mother who called too often. She loved terrible late-night television, dramas, and good oolong tea. She had wanted once to study astronomy. "Because I like watching distant things," she said. "From a safe distance?" Tunde asked. She looked at him. "Maybe," she said. He told her things he had only ever told her voice before, but this time looking at her face. About his mother's pepper soup and Amika's impossible laugh. About the loneliness that had settled in him, like dust in a quiet room. About how some nights he had almost bought a ticket home, and then did not, because he was too proud to give up and too tired to explain why. Hana listened, the way she always had, the way that made him feel heard. At some point the rain stopped completely. The streets of Seoul gleamed, washed clean. They found themselves parked on a quiet ridge above the Han River, watching the city lights reflected in the water far below. "What happens now?" Tunde asked. "I do not know," Hana said honestly. "Are you afraid?" She considered this for a long moment. "Of dying? Sometimes. But mostly I'm afraid of wasting the time I have." She looked out at the glittering city. Tonight does not feel like wasted time. Tunde nodded slowly. "No," he said, "it does not." They stayed there as the horizon began, almost imperceptibly, to lighten. Pale gray at first, then something like gold. At some point Hana's head tilted sideways, and she was asleep. Quietly, peacefully, like someone who had finally stopped watching from a distance and allowed herself simply to rest. Tunde sat beside her. The yellow taxi parked above the city, Seoul waking slowly below them. Morning coming in, soft and golden. And for the first time since he had stepped off that plane, tired and proud and quietly terrified, Tunde did not feel alone. Not because everything had been solved, not because the road ahead was clear, but because someone was beside him, real, breathing, present. He started the engine, slowly, gently, so as not to wake her, and he drove, through the waking streets of Seoul, with the sunrise growing behind him, and the whole quiet city opening up ahead. And sometimes the most powerful connections in life begin with something as simple as a voice in the dark. A stranger who noticed you when you felt invisible. Someone who learned the shape of your loneliness before they ever learned your name. Tunde never planned to find love in Seoul. He planned to survive, to work, to send money home, to endure. But life has a way of giving you what you need most, not always in the form you expected. Sometimes it comes as an opportunity, sometimes as a challenge, and sometimes it comes as an unknown number at 2:17 in the morning, in the middle of the rain. I have one last question for you, and I want you to think about it honestly before you answer. Is there someone in your life, someone you may have overlooked or taken for granted or never properly seen, who has been quietly watching out for you? Maybe this is the moment to reach out to them. Leave me a comment below. Tell me who that person is or what this story made you feel. I will be reading every single one. And if this story stayed with you, if it moved something in you, please share it with one person who needs to hear it today. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you have not already. I will see you in the next story. Take care of each other out there.